Okay, this is a 2006 Kia Sorento XL, and it is made obviously in Korea and imported into the Bahamas. And I understand that the Kia Sorentos that are made for the market that's not within the United States are slightly different in design and layout. And so I haven't been able to find a video to change the oil sensor, so I'm having to do it blind and figure it out myself. First plan is to remove the wiring, and I'm very nervous because a lot of these plastics are susceptible to heat and just fall apart in your hand, so I'm kind of nervous about taking out the electrics, but that's what I'm going to do first. So this is how they work. It doesn't seem like a very good system, but you press on it there to release it. Well, I already see a problem. This end of the lead goes down there and has no clip. And then these have clips, but this end seems to go and disappear behind there and tie into the main harness. So you can't, if you can't disconnect this end and this end, you really can't disconnect the wiring completely. So all I can do is unplug these plugs and try to just pull it out of the way to get this part off, which is an intake manifold. Okay, well, these wires seem to be attached to a plate that bolts here and there. So I think I'm just going to loose this plate instead of unplugging the wires. Well, the throttle cable runs over everything, so we're going to disconnect it, and it comes loose by pulling this and taking this little pin out, and that should loose the cable. It is a little tricky, but it comes out. There's a little slot that it slits in there, and then you got to get it lined up and pull it out like that. So that's basically how it comes off. And next we got to remove this plate and this that hold the throttle cable. Number 10 socket. Well, to be on the safe side, I like to use Ziploc bags and label so that you make sure to get the right bolts back in the right holes. Okay, for the plate holding the electrical, it's a number 12. Now, this one was a little tight. This is a very hard metal thing that was in the way, but it came out all right. And it looks like the last bolt's on number 10, so then we should have it. And next I think I'm going to remove this tube that runs across here and over to here and over to here. And I'm just going to disconnect this here and disconnect these two at this end and try to get it out of the way. Number 12 socket. Number 10 socket here and here. This one didn't want to come off because the frame, the pipe is held so tight I couldn't pull the hose back. This one came off fine and the other one came off fine. Well, it's good to remember how this comes out. It goes sort of under here and then between here and over the top of there. It's important to remember that, I guess. Okay, next we have a ground wire that attaches there with a number 10 socket. That's kind of in the way of getting this wiring harness out of the way. Next I'm going to remove the carburetor, and I'm going to try to let it hang, but as you can see the bolts are in the way, the pipe's in the way of the bolts, so you got to remove this pipe first and then get at the bolts. I've had this off before to change the spark plugs in this vehicle. They're underneath this. You have to take all this off and the carburetor. I really kind of was quite annoyed by that. Number 10 socket driver, get the clamps, or you can use a Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, remove the filter cover to help get it off. We got one more hose in the back here it needs to disconnect. Well, now I think I'm just going to disconnect the two electrics, but I'm going to leave these hoses on and let it hang. The first one came off just fine when you can see that there's the button to push, but the second one seems to be a different layout, and even pressing on this, it doesn't seem to want to come loose. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. I don't want to break anything. And the two sides seem flat on that, so it seems that this is the area to squeeze, but it just doesn't want to squeeze properly. I'm afraid to squeeze it with pliers, but I might have to try that. I could let it just hang, but I'll have to think about it more. Okay, found the solution. You weren't supposed to press here. You got to press way in the back, right there. Okay, number 12 socket. Okay, next I'm going to remove this number 12 and number 14 in the bottom bolts. Small correction. This was a 14 and these two are 12s. Okay, I've loosened this hose, but this lower one doesn't need to come off. But we've got a bracket here, back here that needs to loosen that holds the wire harness. There wasn't enough space for a socket to get in there. I tried different things, but it didn't work, so I have to use an open end here. Number 10. Okay, next I'm going to take care of this bracket. This is a number 12 here and here, and a larger bolt here. I'm just going to loosen this and retighten it and just pull it out of the way instead of taking the bracket completely off, and label that these two bolts go to this bracket on the bag. Okay, number 14 down there. Okay, next I'm going after these two brackets, this one and this one, number 12 socket. It's this bracket and this bracket. Okay, next I'm going for this pipe, number 10, two bolts there that go to there. In this case I'm putting the bolts back finger tight, since I'll be fine there. Okay, next plan of attack. There's a bolt here, and I may not have to take off that whole bracket. I just may be able to take off the top bolt. And they're number 12. And I'm going to take this completely off because it's to need that to get at that off to change the spark plugs, and I plan to change the spark plug same time. I'm going to loose this and free this up and then undo that bracket. Okay, number 10 socket to get that bracket off. Okay, decided to disconnect the battery, which is always a good idea, just so I could reach in better to get these lower bolts. And this is the bracket. I'll stick them out. This bolt was a little tricky. You had to use a deep socket and have the ratchet around backwards. There wasn't a lot of room on this side. Well, getting that out wasn't easy, but she's out. And it's necessary, again, to change the plugs because you have to get at all the bolts to remove this plate to change the plugs, so I probably had it off before. In fact, I found the inner bolt loose. Going for the top bolts now. I just decided to use the breaker bar in case they're tough. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're number 12. Okay, and this nut, and one in the back here, and she seems to be free now. She's out. I laid it down backwards because it looked like you could damage these if you rested it down on that side. Butterflies. It should be. Anyway. That's how she looks so far. Now this is something I was worried about. These plastic clips for the fuel. When I tried to squeeze that one to get this loose, it just broke the plastic. So I'm kind of concerned now. I'm not sure how I can even get them off. Okay, we're going to try to take the fuel rail, loose the fuel rails. I'm just worried about this being in the way. I was hoping to just lift it out of the way to reach, to reach the sensor, but I'm afraid that this pipe is connected to a flange I saw on the back of the engine that's hard to reach, and so I don't think this can move without a serious thing. So it's bad enough I got a lot of complication here. I have drained the fluid, the coolant out of the engine, but for now I'm just going to see what I can do with the rail, at least on this side, and and maybe loose it on the other side, and then see if I can loosen the lower intake manifold. I don't really like how this is going, but I pried it up. They didn't seem to come loose when I loosened the bolts, but I'm prying up the injector system. I'm going to pry up the other side and see if it comes out in one piece. Just concerned about the wiring. I wish the clips were good and I could have undone the wiring, but I'm afraid to do that. Well, I couldn't get a good pry on it, so I put wire around and pried it up with a screwdriver. I got some gas leaking now from under here. I'm not sure why. Maybe this upper part has come loose. Didn't pull the whole thing up. Anyway. Well, I looked at the guy's video and I didn't think I could get an angle on those bolts and thought I had to remove the fuel rail, but I'm going to see what I can do to try and get these bolts that are way up under there that don't look like they have that they can be undone without removing the rail, but maybe they can. Okay, I put some adapters on this to get a really thin rod going down in here so I can get past the fuel rail. Well, with great difficulty I got all of them out, but there's a sleeve, additional sleeve, which I only got some of them out. I'm just afraid when I lift it that some of the parts might fall down in the engine. I had to use a magnet to get the nuts out. I think it'd be nice to have a magnetic socket so that the nuts stay in the socket. I'm sure there's something like that. Anyway, I gotta take these guys. Looks like this plate here has gotta come undone and then it'll be loose. Okay, took this hose off from down in here, right there, so I get a better pinch on this one. Try and get the electrical off. And yeah, that was the plan. I don't know, this is a very difficult job and I may be doing it all wrong, but I have to keep moving forward. I'm going to take all this off. I don't know if there might be an O-ring in here that joins this, or I get a little more play. This job is really difficult and not so straightforward, or I've got it all wrong. Okay, I took a bolt out of here, and here, and lifted it up over and took the hose off, and now I'm ready for a number 12 socket to get this off. I should have had a gasket for that. Okay, as I suspected, an O-ring going in here, but we still got the rest of the pipe that's a problem. That seems to be fastened way down behind the engine. I had to wedge the thing out to get the plugs out. I mean, they didn't want to fit between the pipe. And this pipe seems to be connected way in the back of the engine. Almost unreachable place. Yeah, this is an injector that broke off, so I fixed it back. Finding more duct tape way down in the engine. I don't know how it could have got there. Strangest thing. Well, the lower intake manifold will not come out unless this pipe is removed, and the only way I can see, well, it attaches way back behind here. There's a plate in the way that has to come off, and then there's, I think, 2 bolts and an elbow going into the engine, so I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and do it. Okay, the plate is going to be a number 10. It holds a bunch of wires, I think, running around the back of the engine. Okay, I thought I felt a second bolt, but there was just one bolt holding the plate, and it appears to be the spark plug wires that are in a bracket, and they're covering the elbow that needs to be loosened. Okay, I put the string around the wires and pulled it to hold the plate out of the way. Okay, this is to show that that pipe actually had another O-ring at the other end, and I didn't have to loosen the elbow that was in the back. And that was the solution to that problem. Well, I don't know why I don't have better pictures of the whole rack out, because I think I did take the whole fuel rack out. Anyway, the bottom line is all the YouTubes I saw on the internet were nothing to do with my car. There was no sensor for the oil. My leak was in the head, I think, right about there, and couldn't do anything about it. It means pulling the head. So in the end, I painted a lot of parts and changed the spark plug, and I had to do a whole lot of fancy business with the electrical to get it all back together. In fact, I'm wondering where those pictures are. And it would have been nice to show how I made the solution, which was to use liquid tape and fix a lot of the electrical connections. Anyway, I got the spark plugs changed and got her all back together and got her running again. I'll just put a little clip of the engine running sweet.